Hey, we're joined here with Peter Flaherty from Baseball America. Dude, you're new to Baseball America. How you doing?
Yeah, relatively so. I'm doing well. I'm really excited to be on, so I can't thank you guys enough for having me.
We're
So,
collecting our Thanos stones
right.
from Baseball America. We talked to JJ Cooper, we talked to Carlos Collazo, we've talked to a couple of the other guys now. So we're collecting the whole set. So in a little bit of prep here, I Google people's names, and one of the first things that pops up for you is a picture of you holding up a trophy from the Cape Cod League Championship. So I
Yes.
understand you were working with the Cotuit Kettleers for a while.
Yeah, it was. It was a blast. It's kind of where I got my start in baseball. I realized really quick and from an early age I was never going to be good enough to play beyond high school, but like so many other people, I my love for the game still remained. So I was looking for ways to stay involved. Really lucky where my family has a house down in the Cape, so I would go there during the summer. I found out about the GM internship and MLB scout liaison role. I applied for it and got it. It's an unpaid position, so to earn some extra coin, I cleaned the bathrooms and swept the bleachers, mowed lawns outside, or not mowed lawns, mowed the lawn outside the field, and I guess I was paid also in being able to shag. So I was able to build a lot of really good relationships with scouts, coaches, and players alike. And just, I tried my best to be a sponge. And my second summer, it was a really fun year. We won the Cape League title, and that's where that's the origin of that picture. It's still my picture on like my personal Gmail and stuff. I can't really close the yearbook on it because to this point, it's probably my proudest moment of my career.
That's badass.
And
I
so
actually made it. I actually made it out to the Cape back in 23. My wife's dad and brother live in Connecticut, in Farmington, outside of God damn it, in Farmington, Connecticut. And she's like, "Hey, we got a day. Let's go do something." And I'm like, "Cape Cod's going on right now." And she's like, "Okay." We're both big baseball fans, and she is as well. And we drove out there and caught a game in Hyannis.
nice. Yeah, I mean, as you probably saw in your one game, it's like it's the creme de la creme
Oh yeah.
at the college level. I mean, all 10 teams are ultra competitive. There's so much parity in the league, and I mean that in the most complimentary way. Like
Yeah.
any of the 10 teams going into the season could win it, and there's just so much talent. Every ballpark is so beautiful. It's a really intimate environment. So, not to go on a Cape League tangent, but if anyone's in the area, I'd highly recommend it because it is a really cool experience.
Yeah. What is a kettleer?
Oh, that's actually a great question. Oh gosh, I don't even know if I could give the exact definition, but I think way early on during the days of the settlers and when the Mayflower made its way over, there was I think a base, not, I don't know if you could even call it a base back then, but there was like I guess a trading post or a camp on Cape Cod in the Katuitt and Barnstable area, and these people would make these kettles and they would trade them for various other goods allegedly, and
Ah.
they would call these people that made the kettles kettleers. I guess that's what I've been told. I don't know if that's 100% a fact, but that's kind of what I roll with, and I it does make sense. So until proven otherwise, that's what I think it is.
So I always wonder how prospect scouts, writers in particular, like they talk about the connections. Like how do they? You can't be everywhere at once, and not
Mm.
everybody's Eric Longenhagen out there all summer. Looking at the Arizona Summer League and all that. So you talked about making connections with scouts and with team personnel. Is that still who you draw a lot of resources from for what you do now?
Yeah, 100%. I think if you asked anyone both at Baseball America and within the industry, our connections within scouting departments and front offices are invaluable and helps us immensely with creating the most accurate draft rankings or prospect rankings. I mean, I know personally when doing the Padres best tools, I talked to pro scouts within the Padres org, and also pro scouts outside of the Padres org to try and paint as complete a picture as possible when putting together the organization's best tools, kind of trying to figure out a pecking order for all these guys and so on. So I think the connections that I've made and really everyone else has made have lasted well beyond its origin.
I see that you have a little bit of scouting in your background as an associate scout with the Yankees. What does somebody need to do to get into that world? Is there training?
I think so. My experience was I met my boss Matt Hyde and my the scouting director Damon Oppenheimer on the Cape in that 2019 summer, and was able to build a strong connection with them. I think with Matt Hyde, who's an 80 grade human being and an 80 grade evaluator, I was operating the TrackMan at a game, and it was kind of during a quieter part of the summer. So at that particular game, it was just myself and Matt Hyde, and it was just us two, and we got to talking about players and what I was seeing and what he was seeing, just trying to pick his brain and learn from him. And he gave me his card at the end of the night. We stayed in touch, and he just kind of texted me out of the blue, kind of unfortunate timing. It did work out, but he texted me in that like late February 2020, asking if I'd like to help him out around the Northeast, be an extra set of eyes, be on the area code game staff. And I was like, oh my gosh, like absolutely being able to call myself a Yankee is you know, a really big
Pinnacle.
time honor. So I jumped at it. And again, kind of throughout
Even for a Boston guy?
yeah. So I grew up, I have a really weird fandom path. I actually grew up a Rays fan, because I loved Carlos Pena and Carl Crawford. So
Yeah.
I grew up a Rays fan, and then as I kind of progressed further into the game, it was more just like pulling for players than it is a specific team. But no, it was a surprising non-adjustment for a Boston guy to become a Yankee. But I think for me, it was just being in the right place at the right time,
Right.
willingness to work hard and get after it and just continue to learn and expand my horizons and evaluating. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily easy to get into, but I don't think it's an impossible path to kind of take that first step on.
Right. Right. Like we're getting ready to move to Durham here and maybe the next year in 26. And I'm right in the middle of it. Like Cary's right there and Durham's there and the whole Carolina League's there. And before I leave out of San Diego, I'm going to message everyone I know in the Padres organization. Hey, I'm going to go out there. I can go look at guys for you. Just to kind of throw it out there, you know.
Oh, I'm sure they'll take you up on it. And as you said, that area, I mean, that's like,
yeah,
that's as big a hotbed as you can get between, you've got a ton of pro ball and it's a college hotbed. You got the collegiate national team during the summertime. So, I mean, that's a big time spot in a beautiful area too.
It's funny
Padres
because
seem to be picking a lot of guys from North Carolina and
Duke,
Maryland, and
yeah.
We for a minute we were looking at Winston-Salem, and we'll get into interviewing here in a minute. But we were going into Winston-Salem, and I'm like, there's Wake Forest there, there's High Point, there's all kinds of in indie ball there. I can make something out of it. I can do something.
Yeah, there are a lot of good air, and like I mean, you can't really go wrong. I'd say like that Raleigh Durham area is probably the best, but no, you can't really go wrong. Like I mean, even Winston-Salem is really pretty. High Point it's right near Greensboro, so
yeah.
I mean, that's I'm kind of jealous still being up here in Boston. We get baseball from like April, like March to May, and then you get the Cape League, and then it's just like an iron curtain. But no, that's gonna be a blast.
All right, well, hey, let's get at it. Let's start with the 25th overall pick was Kash Mayfield this year, and we haven't heard. There's one photographer that we know in Arizona that's posted some video, a little bit of photographs, some scouting. We haven't heard much other than that. What can you tell us about Kash?
Yeah, I really liked the pick. He was he established himself as one of the more advanced strike throwers in the 24 class as an underclassman, but he didn't pitch in any of the major events in the summer leading up to his draft year. But he was still a big time helium guy and kind of rocketed up draft boards thanks to a really impressive performance at both during the spring, and it was kind of kicked off with a impressive showcase performance at the PBR Super 60, which is one of the major events. And he showed really well there. It's a really aesthetically pleasing and low effort delivery, flashes body control and athleticism. Great body at 6'4", 200 pounds. I mean, his fastball took a considerable jump this spring. It was up to 97, and he's also got 2 above average secondaries in his pocket, at least I think, and a high 70s slider and a low 80s changeup. I think the above average grade on the slider hinges on kind of, at least myself, projecting on him adding some velo and some teeth to the pitch. I think that his changeup is probably more far along than the slider right now, but he's got plus control across the board. He can land all 3 for strikes. Looks every bit of a starter. I don't think there's a whole lot of relief risk. So I was a big fan of the pick.
Yeah, the Padres seem more willing than most organizations to take these late risers or guys that weren't on the showcase as much as others.
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting point because I think Mayfield fits the bill of that. I know that we'll talk about another draft pick who's kind of been like making serious noise out in Arizona in Cobb Hightower. But you're right, like they do kind of go after at least sometimes these guys that might not fit the bill of like PG All-American, area code, East
Right.
Coast Pro, like all those boxes. So I think it's more, I don't think it's super intentional, but I think that where they've picked, they've been able to nab guys that kind of fit that mold, but I don't think they're intentionally going out of the way, trying to like force diamonds in the rough, if that makes sense.
All right,
Excellent.
so
So
the
hey,
next name we got
Kavares,
on our list here
yeah.
is Kavares Tears, an outfielder with some serious looking power.
Yeah, I mean, Kavares was, I mean, he raised his draft stock considerably this past spring at Tennessee, kind of played sparingly as a freshman, showed flashes, and then he finally kind of worked his way into an everyday role on the national championship winning team, and he was an integral part of it. He had 324 with 16 doubles and 20 home runs. Physical kid, big time power from the left side. It's plus to the pull side. I think the key for him in achieving his offensive upside is the continuing to add polish to his hit tool and contact ability. I think that's the key both for him and a lot of guys. So he's not alone in doing that. But I think in reaching his ceiling, it's going to be a refined approach, polishing up the swing decisions and contact ability. But the power is very real. And I'm excited to see him make his pro debut this year.
You know, I kind of shy away from the toolsy. He's very toolsy. Toolsy kind of sounds like a scout term of like he might be able to make it, but he has to really, he has to really work hard to gain all the talent out of him. So just toolsy to me almost as a pump the brakes on the guy. And like we've had a lot of toolsy guys in the Padres organization that never made it past double A. With his age, is he going to be able to make it to the majors? Is there a path there?
Yeah, I mean, I think anyone can, and you bring up an interesting point when talking about tools. I mean, you can be blessed with all the tools in the world and, be kind of a great showcase player, for lack of better phrasing, and be a great 3 o'clock hitter, but it really means nothing if you can't get to him in game. Like I think that's the key for Kavares. It's the key for anyone. I mean, you're nothing if you can't flash your tools in game, and I think in a similar breath you talk about, and I think in today's game, you hear a lot about stuff with pitchers, like, oh, he's got big time stuff. Well, it means nothing if you can't pitch. And I think all it means is it just buys you a little bit of grace, like having stuff or
Right.
having tools. Because if you're a pitcher and you have stuff and you can't locate, you're either going to get hit or you're going to walk the house and eventually get released. It might just be a year later. So I think, I think for everyone, I mean, you got to get to it in game. Kavares has got to his power in game. He hit enough at Tennessee last year. I'm really curious to see how it progresses in pro ball because there was a little. I think the one bugaboo with him was the miss against secondary offerings and picking up spin out of the hand. But again, he's not alone in having that issue. They'll work on him. They'll clean up the low hanging fruit and go from there. So I think that was a solid pick in the 4th round.
Yeah. Yeah, we're really impressed this year with the Padres picks. And they're 80 grade names. I mean, Kavares, you got Cobb, you got Kale, you got Boston,
Oh, it's a great
Kash.
group.
Well, let's move on to Cobb Hightower. And now I heard he was named after Ty Cobb. That's something I might have heard somewhere in one of the write-ups about him.
That I can't speak on. That might be a a testament to the lack of research. I did a lot of research, but I can't speak on whether or not he was named after Ty Cobb, but it would make sense.
So there's talk of him maybe going off short, going into second base. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think I don't think a position change for Cobb would be that big of a ding on him. I think that people eventually see him making the shift over to second base, but the bat with him is big time. Like the reports out of Peoria, at least initially from the Bridge League, were beyond glowing. I think he walked more than he struck out, and these aren't available stats. I'm just trying to recall what he was told, that he hit really, really well. I don't want to put a number on it because um I don't want to be way off, but he raked, for lack of better phrasing. It's a super hitterish look. He's got quick hands, plenty of bat speed, consistently on the barrel, and there's this really appealing and exciting compact explosiveness to his operation, and he moves really well in the box. Um, a lot of it is what you look for from an operation standpoint and really just an offensive profile standpoint. It is hit over power, but he can impact the baseball, and I think his bat speed combined with the control and feel for the barrel he has bodes well for him getting to that power in game. And I think they'll give him every chance to try and develop as a shortstop, but eventually I do think he's going to profile best at second base, which is not a knock at all. His offense is going to be what carries him.
Visually, he kind of looks like Trey Turner. He's got kind of similar features in his face, and it sounds like he's a bit of a burner on the base pads.
Yeah, he runs well. He's certainly not a clogger. I'd say he's average, if not a tick above. He'll be able to steal bases, and it's a really intriguing hit power combination. I've got both at a 55, which is above average. And the hit tool, I think I could even be a little bit light on. I think there's every reason to believe he's a plus hitter and kind of a upper 2/3 of the order type of guy, potentially top third.
Yeah, our one source there is Jerry Espinoza. He's a photographer for Major League Baseball and a great follow on X. Would always just every game, every day, he was like, God, Hightower, Fountain, all these guys are just raking. He just loved these guys. And he'd post videos of these guys just raking. Another guy that is, we don't know where he's going to end up, but Kale Fountain, 6'5", 225, that young at third base. That sounds like first base to me in the future.
Yeah, massive kid, had an outstanding high school career at Norris High School in Nebraska. He set Nebraska state career records in home runs, RBIs, and stolen bases. He also led his team to a state title his senior year. He got Tommy John surgery early in October, but the expectation is that he'll be ready to swing a bat by spring training, so that's a positive sign.
Nice.
Huge kid, impressive strength, immense raw power. It's comfortably plus, teetering on a tick above plus. Might even be closer to a 70 than it is a 60, but I think the key for him and a lot of the guys with like longer levers and long limbs, when you get to this 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", and up type of stature, is just keeping in sync in his swing and not getting too long. There's big time bat speed, but there are some questions as to whether or not, how much is he going to be able to hit and if he'll make enough contact to be an average hitter. But the power is immense. There's plenty of arm strength. He's got an above average arm over at third, but there is a little bit of stiffness to how he moves. So like you said, he could eventually move over to first base or to a corner outfield spot where his arm would also play. But the power upside here is real.
Excellent. Next 80 grade name, Tyson Neighbors, right-handed pitcher.
Oh yeah. So from a reliever standpoint, like for me coming into the draft and for others, he was a lot of people's top reliever in the class, and he wasn't as nails as he was in his 2023 season at K-State, but he still showed flashes. Like he's got fast moving reliever written all over him. He's got a upper 90s fastball with a ton of life through the zone, and he pairs it with two, I think, plus breaking balls in a hammer curveball and a power slider. And he's got this bulldog mentality on the mound. He's a perfect late inning guy that, shut down reliever, low heartbeat that's always just in attack mode and not fearful at all in how he pitches. So uh, I think the fastball slider combination is lethal, and for a reliever like Neighbors and really any reliever, um, in general, like you can rely on a two pitch mix like that. You see it all the time at the big league level.
Yeah.
Like his fastball's got over 20 inches of ride, and then that low 80 slider or the mid 80 slider is just hellacious. So that's going to serve him well, and he can I think his ascent through the minors will be relatively quick, assuming he performs.
Yeah, he got like 3 or 4 games in Elsinore, and I caught 1 or 2 innings with him, and was just like, oh, that guy throws hard
Oh
thrower.
yeah.
Don't know if he'll stick in Elsinore. They might have push him up to Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne, one of the cities where like it's cold real early for like the first month and a half. It's freezing cold, so we usually just throw all the stats out until like April, when it gets a little bit warmer there. So we'll see how that goes. But moving on to Boston Bateman, this is the kid they call. Is this the kid they call Sasquatch? Is this
Yeah,
Sasquatch?
it is. It is. Yeah, he's like I think he's kind of appropriately nicknamed Sasquatch. I mean, he's 6'8", 240, just massive kid, extra large
Long
frame.
hair.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's an awesome look on the mound. And a really imposing one at that for opposing hitters. But yeah, he had a really strong showing on the 2023 circuit, and he had a great spring. I think had an 11-1 record, ERA of 0.54 with 130 Ks and just 64 innings. So they signed him to an overslot deal, which it's clear they were a fan of him. He was always going to go pretty good, and I think that they got him in a good spot. His fastball's been up to 96. At least it was this spring, but his bread and butter and moneymakers are actually his secondary offerings. I'd say the headliner of his arsenal is his high 70s high spin curveball. It's got a ton of depth, sharp two-plane bite. He'll spin it in the 2,900 and upwards range, which is really, really impressive. And then his slider is a potentially average pitch, and then his changeup is kind of a fringy fourth offering right now. There's some reliever risk with him, just given how big he is. But I'd say to this point, he's outpitched the concern. So I'd say the key for him going forward will be just the continued refinement in his delivery, sort of like with hitters who are big bodied, I guess, for lack of a better term. With pitchers, I'd say the name of the game is also staying in sync and controlling your body, and even more so for Bateman, who's 6'8". Like it's not an anomaly, but he's a really, really big kid. So I think if he can just continue to polish up his delivery, take another step forward in the command and control department, and I think that he could be a really effective number 3 or potentially number 4 starter.
Yeah. And guys like that, they're going to blow through Elsinore. They're going to blow through A ball, even high A. It's once they get to the more refined hitters that in double A and higher is where you're really going to see, okay, can he stick? Can he, is he going to be able to pitch these guys?
Yeah.
Sean Barnett, is it? So everyone's trying to experiment with a two-way player. And I think that's the Padres two-way player. Yeah.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, so far he's only played right field and left field, but I understand he pitched a little bit in college, and he wants to pitch as a pro.
Yeah, I mean the arm strength is immense with Barnett, so he's an interesting guy. As you mentioned, he pitched some at D2 Wingate, and like you said, so far he's only hit. But I mean, an intriguing day 3 pick. I'd say this spring he raked at Wingate. Hit 26 home runs. He actually showed pretty well across a small sample in Lake Elsinore, hit 280. Immense arm strength, like it's a comfortable 60, close to a 70. So I'd be curious to see what he looks like off the mound. I think there's one, like, I think the idea and concept of two-way players is really fun, and you kind of see it more so nowadays a little bit in college, but there's only one impact two-way player at the big league level, and it's Shohei, and he only did it one way this year. But all signs point to him being an impact two-way guy again this year. So I don't like it's so rare to be like I think that no matter what it is, guys are always going to have to pick one or another. Like even with Jack Caglione, who was the best two-way guy in college this year, like all signs point to him stepping off the mound and being a hitter only, which is what he was in Quad Cities. It's what he was this spring in the air or this fall in the Arizona Fall League. So I think that unless all else fails at the plate, you know, he'll continue to hit. So I guess with Barnett, I think it would be intriguing to see him off the mound. I'm sure that they have seen him off the mound and
Right.
scouting him at Wingate and potentially in the facility. But unless he really needs to put down the bat, I would guess he'll continue to hit. And he's also a good defender out there in the outfield.
Right.
So
Yeah, that 60 grade arm plays in right field for sure. I want to step back to those first couple of pitchers. So Boston Bateman, he just turned 19. But Kash Mayfield was already 19 at the time of the draft. That is unusually old for a high school draftee. Um, do you think that may have played into where he was drafted and what scouts thought of him?
A little bit. I think with, there's always appeal to the 18-year-old kid and, potentially even younger from a projectability standpoint and growing into more stuff and velocity. But I think with Mayfield, he's still a fairly low mileage-ish arm, just considering he didn't throw in any of the major events leading up to his draft year. Was not super unknown, but he was kind of this late riser where he ascended into his first round position. And being a 6'4" lefty, and you look at his body, I think maturity wise, being 19, he is a little bit further along developmentally than the aforementioned hypothetical projectable 18-year-old 17-year-old kid. But it's a frame you can add 10 to 15 pounds to. Lefty strike throwers with little reliever risk, I think, are a little bit of a rare breed to come by, especially when you blend the plus control of Mayfield to go along with his stuff. Like he's not just a pitchability number 5 starter. Like there's stuff there with him as well. So I don't think it was too much of a ding on him or Bateman's draft stock.
No, I want to talk just a second on the Arizona Fall League. Made my first trip out there a couple of weeks back, and it seems to me when the Fall League first came out, it was the polishing school. It was like you're probably going to show up in the majors, in the following year. The past few years for me, it really has been like for the Padres kind of point of view. They've guys that need, the pitching is always guys that need to get innings. They sent a couple of guys that had a full season of starts this year, but it doesn't seem like it's the highest quality pitching there. And some of the hitters, although the Padres, had Salas and DeFreeze out there, and there's a couple other guys out there from other organizations that are high level, but just kind of like guys they want to see more of, get a little more action in. Is that how you kind of see the Arizona Fall League?
Yeah, I think that I'm seeing exactly what you're seeing this year. I think that it is no doubt a hitter friendly league this year. Obviously the ballparks are conducive to high run output. The ball really flies. And when you combine that with a down year on the mound, I think that's what you're going to get. So pitchers, I think it's more so nowadays, guys will get shut down after a full season, or if they're at all kind of feeling something funny, whether it be in any part of their body, they're not going to risk anything. So I think you still see a little bit of that, like let's get this guy some innings and clean some things up a little bit, especially with someone like Andrew Painter, who is a blue chip prospect, but he hasn't thrown in almost 2 years due to dealing with injuries, and he's really shined. So I think outside of guys like Painter and a few others, it is sort of like rare to see a lot of guys with a heavy workload going out there and throwing for more or less the full fall. So I think that's also a contributing factor in why it's been so hitter friendly.
Yeah, it's funny because Ethan Salas really struggled in high A this year, and at the very end of the season, he started to kind of put it together, and then kind of took that into the Arizona Fall League, and he's hitting pretty well now. Um, I just, I just don't, the question is that going to be sustainable? Is he going to be hitting that well, going into next year? And that's more of a statement than it is a question.
Yeah, I think it's worth wondering, and I think it's also worth remembering with Salas, like, while he's going on year 3 in pro ball, I mean, he's still going to be 18 until June 1, I think it is. So he's still a teenager. And I think what was really encouraging with him, and while he struggled this year in high A, was his ability to adjust. I think it was either July or August. I mean, it was really tough sledding for him early on,
Yeah.
but he raised his hands, stood a little bit taller in the box, started leveraging the barrel a little bit more, and it led to him backspinning the ball gap to gap on more with more regularity. So I think seeing that, I think with him being able to make that adjustment and emphasize working down and through the baseball as a teenager is really impressive. So I think that it's carried over to the Arizona Fall League where he was an all-star. He's hitting well. He was off to a really hot start, cooled off a little bit, but I think that it's still been a really encouraging stint for him and just a valuable experience as a whole. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I still have faith in him. The defense with him is obviously the calling card. Like, he's a double plus
Yeah.
defender, arm is plus. Like, that's what you look for behind the dish. And he's still in the 18, and he can command a high level pitching staff. So I think with the bat, it would certainly be encouraging if he can carry that over to Fort Wayne to start the year and potentially beyond.
Yeah, it
Yeah, it's
sounds
funny.
like he made some pretty quick strides with all of his
Yeah.
teammates out there in the AFL. And you meet all these new guys you got to get to know, and he made. It seemed like he made pretty close relationships with those guys. I mean, Donovan was talking about him going out mid
Yeah.
innings, like things you see veterans do to
Right.
stop and settle guys down, or that kind of thing. You don't see a teenager with that kind of awareness very often.
You
Yeah,
saw
with
that
him,
with
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Doug. Well, you saw that with, the horrible inning, 5th inning for the Yankees. No, the catcher never went out. The pitching coach never went out. No one ever said, like, hey, let's take a minute, let's slow the game down. This kid does it with people he hardly even knows. And I watched a lot of him in Elsinore, and then I watched a lot of him last year, and I saw him, he caught the game that I went to, and I couldn't believe he can get any better, but the kid just has gotten better. And the glove is super elite, and it's hard to see, like, that guy's 18, like he's a high school senior, he's graduating high school this year, and he's already an absolute elite defender.
Yeah, I mean, with him, like, he's 18 in age only. Like, everything he
Yeah.
does is not typical of an 18-year-old prospect or not. Like, I mean, and I think that you either have that or you don't from an
Right.
intangible standpoint, which sounds weird because you can kind of control it to a certain extent, but the ability to have that confidence in handling a pitching staff and going up to these guys that are a lot older than you. And I mean, even during his brief stint in Double A as a 17-year-old back in 23 with San Antonio, he caught only 6 games. But, like, I mean, for him to be able to do that and to be able to handle a Double A pitching staff and fare
Yeah.
well behind the plate and be able to go up to these arms and talk to them as if they're peers rather than you're kind of like a deer in the headlights and
Right.
starstruck is really, really impressive. And that's carried over to really to every single level he's been at. And I know you saw it firsthand in the Arizona Fall League, and it is like really impressive to witness that, like him going out to a 24, 23, 24, 25-year-old and being like, hey, relax, let's sequence the pitches like this as a bat. Let's go after him with this. Um, whatever it might be. I think that's what kind of is a big time cherry on top
Yeah.
to Salas's game.
Yeah. Okay. One more guy in the Arizona Fall League who Romeo Sanabria is just 18th round. The kid has hit every level, and he's in the AFL, and he is hitting in the AFL. How does a guy like that kind of slip through the cracks and get picked up in the 18th round?
Yeah, I think with him, he's a junior college kid, so
Yeah.
it's funny. He was drafted in 2022, like you said. He's had an impressive track record with the bat. He's swinging it decent in the Arizona Fall League, swung it well at Lake Elsinore, held the zone in Fort Wayne, and did so again in San Antonio. So it's been a busy 2022 for him. But I'd say with him is like he's a first base only type. He's a JUCO kid. Guys like that, where you're not at a premium position, might not necessarily have a premium body or at a junior college. Those are the typical like day 3 draft type of guys. And I think that coincidentally enough, there was another selected in the 18th round this year, Victor Figueroa, who's 6'5", 240, like massive kid. And he was a big time performer at Florida Southwestern, which is another premier JUCO. And just like a very low risk kind of reward only day 3 type of guy. So with Sanabria, like he's going to have to hit all the way through, and so far so good. Like he's more than held his own. Curious to see how much more power he can get to. He showed it in Lake Elsinore. Did it on it was more gap power than it was over the fence power in Fort Wayne, and then ran into one in San Antonio. But I think anytime you get that type of performance out of an 18th rounder or a day 3 guy, the later you go, it's more just like, I don't want to say playing with the house's money because every pick means something, but like it's such a nice bonus to get someone like that who, performs well and is, shown they can handle it.
Yeah, I really feel
Since we're
like
talking about size, since we're talking about size, I want to bring one other guy up. The Padres signed an undrafted free agent after the draft, Alex McCoy, 6'6", 260-pound outfielder. Do you know anything about this guy?
Oh, I wish I did. I think he played at actually Maryland, or he was
at Hofstra.
Hofstra? Okay, yeah, he was at Hofstra. I know he hit well at Hofstra. Big kid at 6'6", 260, like sort of like a similar-ish body type to a Griffin Dorshing. And like guys like that.
Yes, let's go. I love Griffin Dorshing.
That's our boy.
I know, it's a deep pull. Griffin, I think, was like 6'4", 250. And I don't think he's not going to be able to match Griffin in raw power. So it's like these undrafted free agent, it's just like, he's got a tool. We'll give him, a little bit of chunk of change, take a flyer on him. Really, there's only good can come out of it. There's really no risk. So it's like, if this kid's power plays professionally, then that's awesome. If it doesn't, then oh well.
Well, hey man, we really appreciate you coming on. Drew, just one quick question for me. Is there anyone in the Padres organization that, we haven't already talked about, that everyone knows about, that you're high on?
Oh, that's a good question. I really like Braden Nett. And I know that I know he's a familiar name to you guys. It's a kind of a scouting success story for the Padres. He didn't pitch in college. In 2022, which was the year he was signed, he recorded just 2 outs in the Appy League and then had an okay appearance in the draft league. They signed him. It's kind of just been all up from there for Net. And he's one of the more intriguing arms for me in the system. He's got an athletic frame. There's some length in the lower half. I think he moves really well on the mound. It's a short, quick arm stroke, and the athleticism really shines. I mean, he's a former basketball player, so it's evident in his dynamic movement patterns. His fastball has been into the mid to upper 90s. It's most effective and generates the most swing and miss in the top half of the strike zone, thanks to its carrying life. He supplements it with a low to mid 80s slider that, flashes tight sweeping life with some depth. Had a solid 38% miss rate this season, and he rounds out his arsenal with a seldom used high 80s to low 90s changeup, and then a serviceable curveball that'll flash some depth. So I like him. You've got, he checks boxes where it's athleticism stuff. I think the key for him going forward is just continuing to refine the strike throwing. The command can kind of be inconsistent, and it can evade him at times. So if he's around the zone with his arsenal, that's when he's most effective. So that's an arm I've got circled, and I'll be watching closely this year.
He's a friend of the pod.
Yeah.
We interviewed him last off season, and
Oh man,
Dude,
he was surprisingly upfront about his struggles. Like between COVID and injuries and everything, he hardly seen competition for the last like 3 years. And so for him to get back into it, really for him, it was learning how to compete again and finding the confidence within himself to trust what he's got and to attack guys. And so it was really interesting hearing him talk about. I mean, people they want to talk about like from a position of confidence, but hearing him talk about finding that confidence in it again, and that's what helped him be successful last season going into the AF. Carry that over this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it has been a really fun story to watch, and his trajectory is so unique. So, I mean, I know I'm pulling for him. It's a story that it's hard to not root for. So, I'm really excited to see what he does this year and beyond.
All right, man. Well, hey, we really appreciate you coming on. We're going to have you on again next year. We'll have you on often. So great to have you, Peter. Thanks for coming on.
Oh my gosh, I'd
Maybe
love
we'll hit
that.
you up for the post-draft recap.
Yeah. Oh man, you can pencil me in. I'm on whenever you guys want or need me. So I can't thank you enough. This was a blast. So I really appreciate it.
Bam. Fuck yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Dude, that was epic.
Guys.
Hell yeah.
That was awesome.
About 3 people listen to the podcast, so I'm not sure how much reach you're going to get, but since you're coming from,
I was just happy to be on. I love chopping it up, just like you guys. So,
but every once in a while, we'll be down. Like I go to spring training every year, and that's when you run into parents and that kind of. And every once in a while, we'll be talking. It's like, yeah, I listened to you guys. We actually had somebody tell us it was one of the parents, and he said that he forwarded the podcast to Sam Geeney, who was the director of player development at the time, I think.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, it's so weird. Like there are a lot of like people who just kind of like lurk in the shadows and listen more like quietly. It's the same with us at BA. So, I mean, it adds to the fun of it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for getting together.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
absolutely.
thank you guys so much for having me on. If it's ever, I know I'll drop my cell phone in the little Zoom chat if it's ever easier than email to communicate with. So if you guys are ever really struggling for guests, I'd love to. I'll hop back on wherever you need.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.